He's gonna get. He's gonna fight me. He's something like me. He thinks he's awesome.
Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking. I want to talk to you about Gwar vs. Time. I don't have a game box, I do apologize. This is a brand new game that is seeking funding through Kickstarter. That is a deck building game in which you are going to be drafting different characters and different aspects, different songs, war songs if you will, from the history of the band Gwar. Now if you're unfamiliar with the band Gwar, well, I mean, just go ahead and Google up a YouTube video or two of the band. They are a heavy metal hard rock band that I think, if I remember correctly, the idea was that you know, maybe they considered themselves not the greatest musicians in the world, but they thought if they went on stage in just extremely outlandish costumes and also with an extremely outlandish like space opera, if you will, then they would tell a story while they're on stage and they would entertain the folks. Now, I personally have seen Gwar in concert a few times. I've worked security for that too, back when I was much younger, when I worked security at heavy metal concerts and other concerts too. And I mean, I know a few of the members of the band are no longer with us, but they were extremely nice and extremely pleasant human beings to deal with, which one day maybe I'll do a story about, or do a video about all the different bands that I worked security for and who were jerks and who weren't. But Gwar were peaches of human beings. They were very respectful and very nice. But regardless, let me tell you about this, and maybe I'll tell a few Gwar stories and my final thoughts as well. I'll tell you about this game. I'll show you how to play it. You know, deck building games are kind of hit and miss for me, but this one definitely did hit for me on a lot of different levels. So let's show you how to play the game, and I'll come back here and I'll tell you more. Alright, to begin with, I'm going to show you how to play Gwar vs. Time, but just a couple things to keep in mind. One, this is just like the cards of the game that I was given for this video. Now, ostensibly, you only need the cards to play, but I don't have the game board per se, and I also don't have the time tracker as well. The time tracker determines how long the game is going to last. Depending upon the number of players, it can last 11, 13, or 15 turns, but it isn't necessarily a number of turns that each player takes. It is dependent upon a few things that can possibly happen when you draw cards and you put them out onto the board. I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But first, I just want to talk about really quickly, if you're familiar with a deck building game, you're going to start with a starting deck. In this case, you start with these 5 Bohab cards, and you start with these 2 Ragnarocker cards. Now, just all the cards are going to have these two, like, they're going to have a name, they're going to have some art there. And my understanding is that this art is from, like, this is Gwar vs. Time. The idea is that these are 2 time streams, and you're doing battle against different things that come out that you have to fight, which are up here. These red cards are the things you fight. And then there's characters and things from past Gwar incidents that will fill these Conquest cards over here. That you'll be adding those cards to your hand. Now, I'll go further into that here in just a little bit, but I just want to explain the theme of the game to you. Now, cards are going to have these, like, sometimes they'll have some text that'll tell you to do a certain thing here. There's some flavor text down here. But the big thing is these 2 things here. This card is worth 0, violence, which is what you use to defeat Gwar's enemies, and it is worth 2 conquest, which is like the buy power of the card. And you use buy to buy conquest cards to add to your deck. Enemies that you defeat just go into a pile, and you'll total up the victory points that you get from them at the end of the game. Conquest cards actually go into your deck and build the deck as you play the game. So you're going to start, as I said, with 5 of these Bohab cards and 2 of these Ragnarocker cards. However, there are several more other starting cards. You can tell they're starting cards because they don't have a purchase level or a violence level up here. Bonner, Spewy, Nate Dog, Matron, Crawl, and Muzzle. And so there's these cards as well that you're going to be able to add to your deck. And see, like, Bonner is a 2/1. And let me find here, like, here you have like Matron is a 0/3, so like they're slightly better cards. You actually draft three of these cards into your hand with the other players. So like each person, like you determine a first player, they're going to pick a card, and another person picks a card, and so on and so forth. And there are 3 each of these extra cards, and so you'll just add them. Now you don't have to draft. You could do it randomly or whatever. I'm just gonna add, you know, 3 random cards to my deck, and I'm going to shuffle it up, and we're going to use that as our deck here. Hold on. Okay. So, and, I mean, technically, I have set this game up as a 3-player game. You know it's a 3-player game because there are 5 of each of those cards available. You can play with up to 5. The number of cards that you have available on a turn are going to be the number of players plus 2. That's why there's 5 cards. So with 4, you'd have 6 cards available, and with 5, you'd have 7 cards available. So let me just shuffle up my deck here real briefly and see what we come up with. Now, as with any deck building game, you're going to have your deck, and you're going to draw a certain number of cards. The number of cards normally that you're going to have access to is 5 with this game. Oh, and I want to actually talk about real quickly, I should have mentioned these cards over here. These are the generic cards that are always going to be available, as long as there's, these 3, I should say, are the generic cards that are always going to be available, as long as they haven't all been purchased. They are cards that have, like these 2, the Mind Control Monthly and the Intergalactic Wrestler. These 2 have purchases of 4. You can see that green 4 up on the top there. And then, like, they are, in this case, it's worth 1 victory point at the end of the game, and it is a 0/3. So, and the Intergalactic Wrestler is purchase power of 4, and it's a 3/0. And this is the generic violence card. So like if you can't kill anything else in your turn, you can do a minor extinction, and it's going to be worth 1 victory point. It costs 4 violence to destroy. And again, these things are available as long as those cards are there. These 2 cards are minion cards. The War Ghoul and the Penguin, occasionally when you restock the deck, because after your turn's done, you're going to fill up the empty spaces that you've purchased. You're going to fill those up with cards off those 2 decks. And if you get a minion spawning card, you'll have to actually spawn War Ghouls. War Ghouls, what happens is that you place them over other things that you get, and notice how it's worth -1 points. So if you take that card, it's worth less points if you have it in your deck at the end. And the Penguins actually cause you to... I like the picture of the Penguin. The Penguins actually cause you, if you read that thing there, it says that you bury... the card that's in the time stream along with the Penguin. And burying is like trashing a card, if you're familiar with that terminology with deck building. Basically, the card is gone and out of the game. So that's kind of bad when that happens. So I'm just going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards off the top. And I want to talk quickly about the lead of the hand. So we'll just look and see what we have here. We have a Matron, we have these 3 Bohobs. So we actually got a pretty decent draw, actually, with what we have. But as the game progresses, obviously you're going to get more and more of these Conquest cards. They're going to have more and more of those abilities and powers, and they're going to be better and better. You're just going to get better and better as you play. But the big thing about this game is called leading. When it is your turn, you're going to pick one card that's in your hand, you're going to lead with that card. And then the other players that are playing, if they can follow the suit of the card, and the suit is located in the middle of this right here. So this is a black suit, it's a beginner card. But you can see there's other cards here, like red is a Gwar card, and you have green and and purple. So you have... And here's this like dark blue or indigo like S color there. But these cards, like when you lead with that, the other players can follow suit. And what happens with the other players is they can follow suit. They just place that card down in front of them. They don't do anything with it really, but they're going to wait until, and then they get to draw another card from their deck to add to their hand. So that's kind of something that I really, really like, and I'll touch on that a little bit more in my final thoughts, but it basically allows players to do something while they're waiting for their turn in a deck building game. So when you come around, so let's just say like I had gone, like I was the third player and the other 2 people had gone, and I got to follow suit. So like, and I got to play 2 of my cards. So maybe I played that one down, and then I got to draw a card from my deck. And then I got to go again, and I played that card down. I got to draw another card from my deck. So I'd have these 2 cards already out and ready for me when it was my turn. Now, what that basically means is that on my turn, I'm going to have 7 total cards to play. Because this isn't a kind of game where you have to, like, buy the ability to draw the next card. You're going to be playing your entire hand and then drawing back up to your 5 cards at the end. But this allows you, with the other players, it allows you to get other cards out, and those cards will sit out there waiting for you until it is your turn, and they'll have different effects and whatever, because cards can actually have... Now, these, obviously, they're the generic cards and the beginning cards, so they're not going to have those effects just yet. But now I'm going to have 7 cards to play with, and obviously you can see with more and more players and more stuff going on, you're going to have, like, different actions and different abilities available to you once it comes around. So on your turn, it's pretty simple what you do. You're going to play all of your cards out, and you're going to total up your total conquest, and you're going to total up your total violence, and then you're going to be able to purchase cards from the tableau. So in this case, you know, we have we have a bunch of these Bohab cards. We have 4 of those. So that's going to be 8 total conquests from those. Well, we get a 9th card, a 9th from there, and then we have 3 there. So we're going to have 12 conquest, and we're going to have only 4 with the Ragnaroker and the Bonner card. We're going to have a total of 4 violence. Well, so with the 4 violence, the only thing we're going to be able to defeat is we're going to be able to defeat one of these with the 4 violence, because all these other cards, and I'll show you some of these here. Well, actually, you know what? I just realized we can actually take out Granbo. I have just enough, because, like, Granbo has a 4 violence. Now, like, and it's going to be worth 2 points instead of just 1 for that. So I would take that, and I would be able to defeat Granbo, and I'd be putting that in, like, my pile of things that I've defeated. But with all of the conquest I have, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 12 total, now I can go ahead and I can spend it on the conquest cards that are available. Now, you can spend it all on one, you can spend it on several different cards. It's up to you as far as what you want to get. So, like if I wanted to, I could, like, take Sluggo. Here, let me grab him here. We could take Sluggo de la Martini, and we'd be able to take it. Now, the one thing about this is a Gwar card. Gwar cards cause you to, anytime you take a red card, you're going to decrease the time available by 1 every time you take one. So if I take that, it's going to move the time down by 1. But it's a pretty good card, and there's a special ability here that says, ask a player if they have attack cards in their hand, and they must answer truthfully. So, like, it's one of those things when you play that, you'll be able to do that. Plus, it's going to be worth 2 points at the end of the game. Now, the thing is with that one, since it only costs 8 conquest, I could take that and take one of these 2 cards that is 4 conquest over there. But there is this very good card with Pestilence Maximus, which is a card that's going to be worth 3 victory points at the end of the game, as you can see there. It is a 2/4, and Pestilence Maximus. And then if you see here, put a Gwar card of 8 pull a Gwar card of 8 conquest or less that you purchase this turn on top of your draw deck. So when you have this, you're allowed to immediately go ahead and place like a good conquest card right away on the top of your on your draw deck, so you know that you're going to have that on the next turn. So that's actually a pretty good card. But if I take that one, I'm using 9 of my 12, and I only have 3 left, and with that 3, I can't really do anything else. So it's kind of a tough decision that I have to make. But, you know, I do like Pestilence Maximus, so I'd probably take that one. I would put this with the rest of my discards, which are these, and I would have to, at the end of my turn, I would draw back up to 5. But because I only have 3 cards left, I would then have to shuffle these up. I'm just going to shuffle them randomly here, and I'm just going to take 2 cards and put the rest of my draw deck there. There is my kill pile. And then I would have, let's see if I got lucky and I got Pestilence Maximus. Nope, I didn't get Pestilence Maximus. But I would have those 5 in my turn, and I would be waiting. Now, and because now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to replace. So here we have Jesmek Dogusha, and Jizmak Dagusha, and we're going to put that one down there. That's a Conquest of 11. Man, that's a lot of Gwar cards. And then we take, and then here we have Mr. Perfect, which is a 10 violence to defeat, and it says you may immediately draw and play another card if you defeat him. So that's actually pretty cool as well. Now there are some more things going on as far as like the different suits. If you play more than 2 of a certain suit, you get to take certain actions and take special actions. I'll talk a little bit more of that in my final thoughts, but you should have a really good idea of how this game is played now. As soon as the timer, whatever the timer is at, as soon as the timer gets down to 0, and I should say that if you do draw a minion card out of the deck that causes minions to show up, that also decreases the time as well. So there can be, it isn't just going to be the players that determine the turns, you know, when they take a Gwar card. It can also just be random chance that you draw cards out of those 2 decks as well. This, once again, if you've watched my channel, you know that I am not the hugest fan of deck building games. But there are certain spectrums of deck building games that I really, really like. And those are thematic ones that I enjoy, and also ones that I don't have to go through a lot of setup with 1,000 different expansions and all these different kind of cards. And this definitely is that as well. But I'll touch on that and also the extended rules and like the advanced play in my final thoughts. Alright, so you should have a pretty good idea of how the game is played. Now, I mean, obviously I just kind of showed you the mechanisms. There's so much more going on as far as the game is concerned. I mentioned like the different suits of the card. If you play with the advanced play, if you play 2 different, if you manage to play 2 or more cards of a suit, you're going to get special abilities and special powers that will allow you to even like engender more cards and more actions than normally that you would. Now, a couple things that I really, really liked about it, and well, actually, before I touch on that, there's couple things. One, I was mistaken. It is not 11, 13, and 15 turns. It is 11, 14, and 17 turns, depending upon 3, 4, or 5 players. So I do apologize. I just misremembered that when I was doing the playthrough. But there are a few different cards I want to talk about really quickly. If you remember, I showed you this little this indigo colored card here, this planet or whatever, and with the like kind of. This is a card that when you play it, it's called like a field of battle card, and when you play it, you put it face down in front of you, and it just stays off to the side. You don't discard it. There can be actions sometimes on the card, like in this particular card, there's an action that allows you to discard it, and when you do, you can like put cards out of like into other people's decks and things like that, which is something I want to talk about here in just a second as far as the interactivity between all the other players. But so like you just, and then also it generates, like this one would generate a violence. And so it just sits off to the side and it does that continually until it is discarded. So, you know, so that's that type of card. Now, some of these cards, like, are going to have, and I should mention that, like, the iconography and, like, the process as far as, like, the coloring and everything like that, really, really well done. There's lots of games that have cards in them that will have lots of different things going on, but they don't make it easy for the players to realize what's going on. Like, they got to take out the rule book and look through it all and everything. Like, what does that icon mean? What does that color mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? This one is really, really straightforward. So, just something I really, really liked. But, okay, so, like, here is this card, and this one is Cornelius Carnage. And he is a 2/3, you know, card or whatever, like 2 violence and 3 conquest, and he has a special ability. Well, I should point out that it has like this little orange circle. You probably might not be able to see that real well because of the light in here. And there you go. You see a little orange circle there? Okay, so that is an attack card. Remember I mentioned like this guy, this Sluggo della Martini, like that he had the ability to like look at your cards and say, do you have an attack card? That is an attack card. And attack cards allow you to attack another player. And this one, Cornelius Carnage, says randomly choose a card from an opponent's hand and place it at the bottom of their draw deck. They then draw back up to their maximum card count. So it's something that you can do. You can hit another person and mess with them a little bit. But here is the thing. Like this Sluggo della Martini, and I'll show you, it has that little yellow circle right there. This is a defense card. So if you have a defense card in your hand and somebody attacks you, you can use a defense card to block it. So there is a way to actually prevent things like that from happening. Now, I do like having the ability to mess with other players and having attack. Even like this one, the planet Enui. Like it says, Discard to put a card from your hand or discard into another player's discard pile, then draw up if necessary. So this actually, if you notice, there is a little orange thing. So this is an attack card as well. So I like the ability to take cards and like mess with other players and just kind of screw with their plans that they have set up on their turn, what they're trying to do. Lots of deck building games, like they just, it's just garden. It's just, you know, everybody's just doing their own thing and just trying to, you know, make the best possible deck they possibly can by, you know, burying or trashing cards and like keeping good ones. And like, and there's lots of ways. I should mention there's lots of ways to trash cards. And one of the special abilities of following suits is the ability to trash cards out of your hand. So that's something that's actually pretty good as well. And also, you know, like I've never liked deck building games where it makes it tough to like thin your deck, like you can't figure out how to do that. So I like it when it makes it easy for me, which this one does, because then I feel smart because I'm making my deck better and I'm actually like got a plan in place to do those things. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Deck building games for me, they need to do a couple things, like I mentioned in the playthrough, like have a theme that I really, really enjoy. And also have like the feeling that I'm actually like accomplishing something. Like I'm just not just taking cards. I'm not just shoving more cards into my deck. Like I can actually put together a plan, put together an idea of how to process this. I really, really like the leading of the cards. I think that like once again it engages other people as they're playing. So like, you know, it's like decisions that you're making as far as cards you're going to put down. How helpful is that going to be for the other players to be able to lead cards on their end as well, to put cards out there, and the fact that like you get to build up a tableau of cards and options before your turn actually happens, so you can actually, you know, do some forward thought planning as far as your turn comes out. I love the wide variety of different cards. I love the setup. This isn't a game where it's like, okay, figure out which 8 cards or 10 cards or 12 cards we're going to use for this particular thing by using the randomizers or whatever it is. It's just 2 big fat decks of cards that you're going to be placing out there, and you draw them and you place them out, and then you're going to go through those cards. And I always like a game where the players have some sort of control over how quickly the game is played and how quickly it is over, and that's something I've also liked a great deal. You know, just because like you can kind of time out the cards, and you can kind of have an idea of how many points each person has. And you can kind of tell them, I'm in the lead right now. Do I want to try to take these Gwar cards as fast as I can so I can kind of speed the game up and get it over with so I can win the game? Things like that, they're really fun. Now, I have one Gwar story. Now, I'm not going to really talk much more about the game, so if you want to turn this off, you can. But I have one Gwar story that I'll tell. So the very first time I've ever went to a Gwar concert, I was in my early 20s, so this would be like, I'm guessing like 25 years ago or so, maybe a little bit later, you know, but over 20 years ago. And I was living with a buddy of mine. His name is Phil. Phil, if you ever watch this video, reach out to me, man. It's like he's like the guy that I spent like a ton of time with when I was young, and he is like vanished. I mean, like I can't find him anywhere. But anyway, regardless. So he was like, hey, there's a Gwar concert, and I was like, let's go. We got to go to this. So it was like super cheap. I don't remember what it was, but it was like, you know, $10-12 general admission. And I remember we went there and we were just like, you know, and what was really weird is there was a couple of weird, like Gangrene open for him, you know, so it was like kind of a, you know, really, really odd, really, really strange. I mean, there was somebody else too. I can't remember what the other opening band was, but I just remember like everybody was waiting for Gwar and everybody was getting excited, and I had no idea what to expect. I'd heard stories about the fact that like you know, spray blood into the crowd and whatever, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be crazy, you know. And so like I remember somebody said, just wear a white T-shirt, you know, just wear a T-shirt you don't care about. So I remember I went there, and like the lights finally go down for Gwar, and people start cheering, and I'm like second or third from the stage, me and my buddy Phil, and like the lights come on, and this was like right after the OJ trial, and so this person with like wearing a OJ Simpson Buffalo Bills jersey comes running out, and obviously like a total fake head. Like, so like basically if they're this tall, like the head is up here, so it's obviously like way too long of a torso, comes like running out and starts running back and forth, and the crowd starts booing or cheering, or they're booing. And I noticed that like this guy had like cables or hoses coming out of his back, and he was being very careful not to like trip over them. And then the lead singer came out, and if you've seen them, their guitars look like axes or whatever. And so he comes out and he swings his guitar / axe and cuts off the head of O.J. Simpson, and blood starts spraying out of the decapitated stump of the neck. Yeah, obviously it was like, a dummy head, right? And it was like, and the crowd absolutely lost their minds, going crazy. And then OJ's like running back and forth, blood spraying on the top of his head. And then he comes forward, and then like he comes over to the crowd, and then he just leans over, and he just starts going back and forth, spraying blood into the crowd. Now the blood was just water and with food coloring in it or whatever. But I remember just laughing my butt off as I'm just getting hit like over and over, and then the band started. Now the rest of the thing was very, very R-rated and very, very over the top, crazed, bad heavy metal. But it was one of like the absolute best like just experiences I'd ever had at a Gwar concert. And I've seen and I went a couple more times to other Gwar concerts as well. It was just more of the insanity each time. And they definitely are an interesting group. I'll say this: I remember the one thing. I remember as I left, I looked down at my shirt and it was just a complete and total mess. And then I remember like even my Chuck Taylor shoes were all like different like colors. And then I remember Phil like we went to like a Denny's or something to get something after the concert, and Phil looked at me and he was like, "Dude," he's like, "your contacts are colored." And I was like, "What?" And I remember I went into the bathroom at Denny's, and like I'd been sprayed with so much like urine and blood and other expectorant, like fake stuff or whatever, that like my eyes were actually not blue. They were like a weird mishmash of colors. And I remember I had to like take my contacts out and put new ones in. So there you go. That's my Gwar concert story. And as I said, when I worked security for them, like 7 or 8 years later, they were all like incredibly respectful to the security staff, and super nice and super kind. And it was just kind of neat to see them without all of the getup on, if you will. So there you go. So Gwar versus Time. If you like deck building games, I think you're going to like this one, especially if you are a fan of the band and if you're a fan of their over-the-top antics. If you have any questions about the game, by all means, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you enjoyed those stories that I just told you. Just be the best version of you that you possibly can be. Just go out there and smile at people, smile at strangers, get them to smile back at you. I mean, hopefully they don't think you're like some crazy psycho, but take the time to take your dog for a walk, and make sure you spend a good 20-30 minutes each day just daydreaming about whatever. Just explore your imagination and be a happy, kind, gentle soul for the world. And that's how we're gonna do it, man. Just one person at a time, just being the best possible person they can be. We're going to make this world a better place. But until next time, I'm the Untitled Viking. You're awesome. I'll talk to you soon.